So let's kick off with the story, the Schoolgate story.
The Schoolgate story. I have a very dear friend called Dr. Emma Craythorne, who is also an amazing consultant dermatologist. And she had her third child at the same time I had my first child. We were mum friends for many years. And obviously when you have a dermatologist that's your friend, you chat about skincare.
Yeah.
And she had this idea for a long time about creating a prescriptive skincare business that did a better job, better formulations than what was already available on the market. And at the same time, I was really fascinated that there was this level of skincare available out there, but that not everybody could access unless you were lucky enough to just see someone like Emma in her practice. And so in 2022, I quit my job in an advertising agency where I'd been for 20 years, and we went into business together, and Klira was launched.
It's not very long ago, is it? 2022. It seems very recent, and you've had a phenomenal 3 years, which we're going to come on to. But talk about coming into the brand world from a background that's you were working with brands in advertising, but you hadn't run your own business before?
No, not at all. Emma and I have been an amazing team, actually, because obviously Emma, the dermatologist, so the formulations, the skin analysis that we do, she is totally in charge of that. And then for me, it was about building the brand, which I knew how to do very well. But then, of course, I had to build the business underneath that as well. I've learned so much in the past 3 years. The type of business we were obviously on day one to where we are now is very different. I think the bit that was most alien to me was the financials, absolutely, which is why it's been so amazing being with Triffin. Yeah. And I was so lucky that another mum friend, Fiona, founder of Nessa, introduced me actually to Triffin a couple of years into our journey.
So let's go back to day one of the business. And you did decide to raise investment. At what point did you raise? Before, after? Just talk us through that first round.
So we had to raise to start because Bespoke skincare business is not a simple thing to get off the ground.
Yeah.
And in fact, if I'd have known quite how big some of the hills are, we would have to climb. I don't know.
You wouldn't have done it.
I don't have done it, no. I'm so happy I did it. But there have been so many barriers to get around.
Yeah.
So you have the Bespoke skincare product, which is made to order. There are obviously many different formulations that we send out. So we found a partner to work with to do that initially. Then we also had to set up the service, which is really the consulting and the e-prescribing side of it, which is quite different to anything else that exists at the moment either. You come to Klira Skin, you take a 51 question test, so it's really in depth. It's based on a global scientific study of the skin. And then our algorithm tells you which one of 12 skin sizes, we call it, that you fit into.
Yeah.
So this is a really multi-dimensional view of the skin. You might have dry skin, yes, but you might also be rosacea prone or get some adult acne spots or whatever. People have a multitude of things that they want to treat with the skin. So we had to set all that up. We had to have our derm team in place. We had to be organised from a regulatory point of view. So yes, we needed money from the get-go. So our first round was some friends and family, and then we raised with a VC.
Okay, and how did you find that very first round?
I think it was harder than I expected to raise the money. And I was also a bit naive about that, to be honest. We have this brilliant idea, and so up we rocked with our pitch deck. Ultimately, the VC that invested in us was through a connection of mine, somebody that I'd worked with for many years, introduced me to a friend. And one theme, actually, because we've raised 3 times in 3 years, is that ultimately the people we've partnered with, there's been some kind of personal connection, which I think on reflection also makes sense because I didn't appreciate this at the time. With an early stage business, they're buying you.
Yeah.
You know, so many people have an exciting business idea, but can you keep going when it gets really tough? And can you get around all of the obstacles it'll throw at you? I think it's really, they're sizing you up as a person. Somebody vouching for you, I think, is what's also really helped us through.
And when we were discussing before we came on air, you were talking about how your background doing pitches in Adland, as it's known, actually really helped you on the fundraising process. Can you share some of that? Because I know a lot of the brands watching will be fundraising or thinking about fundraising.
Yeah.
What did you take from Adland into that landscape?
Oh, you've got to tell your story. What's the problem that you're trying to solve? Explaining your big idea in a very simple way and an exciting way. Yeah. That was my job, to try and make exciting ideas. So I think all of that really helped. Having said that, one bit of advice I would certainly give anyone would be to get other people to look at your deck, because you're involved in your idea. I think it's quite hard sometimes to know, even with that experience, how clearly you're explaining yourself, especially when you're doing something a bit different or like us as female founders selling skincare, talking to a lot of men about it, and they don't think about skincare as much as we do, even though they should. Yeah, I think get someone to look at your deck for you and pitch doctor it and check you're doing that really as well as you can.
Brilliant. So we're 3 years on. You did your first round, friends and family. There's since been 2 further rounds. Can you just summarise the broad structure of those rounds and what their purpose was?
Yeah, I think, gosh, the Klira journey has been so fast. And as I said, not a simple one to launch and execute and get off the ground. After our first raise, we then needed to raise again. And then that was one that happened quite organically. So that was through a private investor who had recently exited their own business. Yeah. They'd done an amazing exit and it was a subscription business. And they were really excited about the idea of doing skincare by subscription. So we raised with them. And then finally, we've gone up another level really in terms of what we want to raise in our ambitions. I think we started to really get the wind in our sails in the second half of last year. Yeah. So now it's quite a different purpose. We are wanting to bring production in-house. We will be bringing production in-house, global expansion. And so for that kind of a raise, we went out to market again. And actually, it was another personal connection through a family office, and someone there had been prescribed Klira by their dermatologist. And they said, this is the most fantastic thing. This is a brilliant business. Why can't I get it where I live, which is abroad? And so the conversation there started again.
Brilliant. So let's talk about Triffin and how Triffin played into these raises, because obviously when you're doing a raise, you have to produce a financial model, know all your numbers. Everyone's seen people pitching in Dragon's Den and not knowing their numbers. And actually, I work with a lot of brand founders, and it's quite easy for a brand founder to not really know their numbers because they're often a creative person who's come in to creating a product out of a need or spotting a market gap or out of a passion. Yeah. So how financially numerate were you in terms of the finances of a business, particularly the finances of a business that's fundraising, and how did Triffin help you on that?
In truth, not really at all literate. I had, in my old role in Adland, I did about ROI, so I could make my way around a spreadsheet a bit. But I think it's true that you don't know what you don't know sometimes. So what are the numbers an investor would be looking for? I hadn't considered things like incredibly basic things like your unit economics or how that then is going to relate to cost per acquisition versus average lifetime value. These are the bases.
It's a scene of basic things. I think 8 years ago in e-commerce, no one had really considered these things. And now people have to learn them as they go.
Yeah, I didn't know what I didn't know. So I think coming to Triffin about a year into the business, it was an absolute lifesaver, and also for cash flow, because as we've done the 3 raises, we've had quite fast but unpredictable growth. So keeping an eye on cash, it's not just about the support with pitching and the quality of management counts and financial literacy that I can now present with, thanks to Ian at Triffin, my tutor. But it's also that cash flow management. And I think if an investor can see that you understand that, you're taking it very seriously, that's a big tick for them, definitely.
And when you're presenting to investors you're running through things like your unit economics, the cash flow management, product level margins, I presume with huge confidence, thanks to the Triffin team, how does that impact the way they see you? Can you read it in their faces immediately that they're thinking, she really knows her numbers?
I don't know if they're thinking, wow, but I think that it's just reassurance and confidence. Actually, one of our investors said to me today, we feel totally confident with you guys. And these are investors who I'd introduced to Triffin in a board meeting because I wanted them to see the level of reporting and live reporting that we're getting through that system as a business. And they were really impressed. But we quite quickly got into a new channel, for example. 6 months in, we expanded out of just doing the D2C into Pro channel. And I've never been a B2B marketer, so that was all completely new to me. And then also speaking to it being specifically to medical professionals, they think so differently how you would communicate to a doctor to other audiences. So that's been a really big learning curve as well.